Good afternoon, family. Today we'll be reacting to another artist who started late in life, and we will be listening to her perspective. And without further ado, let's get started.
Based in Frankfort, Michigan, and I'm a professional oil painter and installation artist. It's a really long story. I began painting in 2003 in response to what I consider to be a second calling. Before I started making art, I was a minister, church minister, and before that a registered nurse. I had been interested in making art at different times in my life, but my father, who was a commercial artist, discouraged his kids from following that path. And so I grew up believing I didn't have what they call talent. And I had gone to taken art classes at different times and basically just dropped them. High school, got a C on my first project. I said, there goes my grade point average. So I dropped my art class. But I did take a class, an oil painting class, 20 years before I started painting. And I was in the class for about 3 weeks. But forward to 2002, I was at a point of transition in my life, and well, part of my story is that I was one of those kids who got molested by a Catholic priest when I was a child. And in 2002, the story broke nationally, and I realized that it was important for me to go public with my story. And I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time. I was no longer doing church ministry, but was still pretty much connected with spiritual stuff in the area. Anyway, I went public with my story and kind of started this whole chain of events that connected me with a national group called the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. It was a kind of involvement that was bittersweet. It was good to know that others had been affected, but I had no idea the scope of the problem. And as I continued to work with a group of women who had been, along with me in the 4th and 5th grade, affected by the same priest, I was trying to help myself and help them find reconciliation for what had happened to us as children. So I worked with the national group and with this local group for about 1.5 years, and it was a pretty difficult journey, kind of a lot of dark aspects to it. You don't ever want to know that an institution is involved in covering up such bad things. Anyway, I went to a meeting in Boston and of this national group, and I couldn't sleep. So for 3 nights, I just lay in bed, and this little voice said, "Do art, do art, do art." And so because I'd had a really profound calling to ministry, I realized that it was important that even if I didn't understand what it meant, that I explore for myself what the meaning might be. So I went back to Atlanta without any interest in making art. I'd totally, 20 years before, kind of given up all hope. And I bought, based on the class that I'd been in, I bought art supplies and put them.
This is like validation for the quote, "What's meant for you will never miss you." It's like, yeah, it might take us longer to get to where we're meant to be if our environment or our mental has been jaded, but eventually you'll always do what you're supposed to do. You'll always get what you're supposed to get because everything's written.
In the corner of the screen porch that we had an easel and canvas and paint, whole setup. And I just sat and looked at it for like 6 months. Like, I have no idea, no desire. And then one day I just saw some flowers outside, and I said, I'm going to paint those. And so I painted them, and it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That was enjoyable. And I just never stopped. So at the time I was 52 years old. I'm now 73. I've made thousands of paintings, I think several thousand. I've sold quite well. I have paintings in the U.S. Embassy in Kyrgyzstan right now, so I can claim a certain amount of modest international recognition. But I actually have had collectors take my work to Germany and to England. And I've spent time in Mexico painting. When I was in Mexico, I met a young composer, musician named David Mendoza. And David and I collaborated on a multimedia art installation that I called Birds Fly In, a human refuge. And it's themed around the using birds as a metaphor for our human migration problems and looking for spiritual solutions to problems that policies don't seem to be able to find answers for. So the installation has become a big part of my life. It's currently in storage, and we're always seeking venues. We've had 3 big installations in a museum and locally, but we would love to take it across the Michigan state line and become a national installation. Yeah, so when I started, I think like many artists, I just was curious to know if I had that thing they call talent, because I so didn't believe that I did. So I, started out painting.
I was thumbing through a book yesterday called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it basically talks about how to improve your self-image, right? Our self-image is basically the premise for where our personality, our characteristics, etc., sit. So if your self-image is something negative, say, I'm not a talented artist, so I can never be an artist, what you look for, the things you notice, in reality, the quotes that resonate with you will all be trying, like you would naturally be trying to justify your premise, like that you're not a good artist or talented artist. So one of the things that's important is to kind of separate, I'd say, and build a real, true self-belief or self-image that will help you get to where you go. Yeah, people try to say, I try to be positive, it doesn't work. I try to do this, it doesn't work. And it's not working because your self-image isn't changing. If your self-image doesn't change, then there's no way you'll change. You'll never become the person that you're supposed to be or that you need to be in order to reach to where you want to go. So it starts with improving your self-image first. And your self-image is basically how you truly believe yourself, and that work and that belief sits in your subconscious mind. So the book talks about a lot of different ways to channel that and change that and become who you want to be to fulfill the role in life that you want to fulfill. You should definitely check it out. I also wrote a book called Born Temporary. It's on my website, stressallen.com, and it talks about the similar type of thing.
Still life, and then kind of graduated to landscape. And when I realized that I was pretty adept at both of those things, I began to become curious about what else was possible. And particularly around the time that I began, it was like I didn't set out to paint birds, although birds have become a dominant theme in my work for the last 7 or 8 years. I started painting birds out of my frustration with the policies and the personality after the 2016 election. And I abandoned my Impressionist palette that had no black paint in it, and I picked up that tube of black paint and I just started squirting it all over a large canvas. And I found that the problems I'd been experiencing at that time, not being able to sleep, a lot of fear about what might happen, especially to my friends in Mexico, who I very much wanted to bring to the United States, but have not been successful in doing so. Anyway, this expressive painting with the black paint led to a real intuitive style of painting. And this realization that there was something greater than me actually motivating and executing my art. So I came to really trust that even though, I kind of shuddered at the thought of painting birds. I didn't want to be a Hallmark card artist. Birds were just like, they came to reveal themselves to me as intuitive messengers of hope and healing for a troubled world. And I continue to feel that my art is here to, and that my success as an artist has not been to create art that people love to hang on their walls, although they do, but that there's a deeper communication that's occurring with my painting. And so that it's that kind of openness that causes me to kind of be more spontaneous and to really aim for spontaneity and freedom in my brushwork, in my choice of colors. And I noticed that even if I would start a painting completely randomly, just with the black calligraphic marks, with random selection of colors, that something beautiful and unexpected would occur that didn't really have to do with my intention. In fact, my worst paintings come when I have an idea. And especially if I create a painting that I really love and then I try to copy it, oh, it's just awful. So I guess what motivates me is the surrendering into this mysterious process that has brought me from painting these. I can show you these, my first painting, into my own style and finding my own voice as an artist. I am the kind of person who, when I was a public speaker, when I was working as a clergy person, I came to the point where I realized that I didn't really know what to say, but something, a higher power than me did know what to say, and all I had to do was get my fear out of the way. So I think the indirect message of my work is let go and let God. Let something bigger than you, bigger than your bright ideas, even the brightest ideas. There's something more than that. So I guess I feel like the work does speak for itself in that it's a product of a mysterious process, and one in which I enter into it as ignorant as anyone of what might happen. And I guess there are times I just step back and go, wow, who did that? Because it's like I have 4 or 5 different streams that flow through me. One is very representational. I can look at something and render it and know that I can be accurate and I can be artistic in that. I know I can be extremely abstract, and I know I can do a lot of stuff in between. And so I don't censor myself. I don't have oh, this is the kind of art that I make. I try to just stay loose with it and let it happen. And I think that that's the message that gets conveyed. The freedom, I guess my thesis, and that's an interesting way of putting it, is freedom. that we can be free, and there are so many ways in which we confine ourselves, as artists and just as humans, that we have beliefs about ourselves and about others that totally keep us in a cage of, limitedness, and I think because of what happened to me as a child and the kind of the determination that I had to have this experience make sense to me and to have it be a healing experience and not one of, oh, I'm a victim. And ultimately that's why I left the organization that was where people were identifying so much with themselves as victims, because I really understood that with a certain kind of approach, you can turn the experience of having been victimized into something that is powerful and good. So, freedom, I think, is one of the, there's a picture of me, actually. Where is it? Up there, of me, this little girl standing on a fence in our backyard. I grew up in Pleasantville, New York, home of the Reader's Digest. And I just remember being on that fence and my mother said I would just say, let me out, let me out. So I think there's something in my spirit, my soul, that just has never wanted to be confined, and not confined by other people's definitions of me, nor my own self-limiting doubts and fears. And I want that freedom for others. And I have had the experience of people, mainly other artists, come in this space, and maybe they're artists who haven't been making art. And this one woman came in with her husband one time and she just burst into tears. And I said, what, because I do have a counseling background as well. And I just said, what's going on? And she said, there's just so much freedom here. And I think, I particularly, for artists who aren't making work, they're not doing their art, I know what a painful existence that can be, because I do believe that artists have something deep inside that is spiritual in nature that wants to come out. And that have that spirit thwarted is probably one of the most painful experiences that, if you are called to be an artist, you can have.
Amazing perspective, amazing video. If you haven't had the chance, go ahead and subscribe, like. It helps me show up more in the algorithm, and I'll see you next episode of Art Power. Peace.